Wiley McGraw, welcome to the Biohacking Secrets Show.
Anthony, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Heck of a name you got there. Sounds like you're ready for Hollywood.
Oh man, my entire life I've heard different ways in which people experience my name. So yeah, that's a new one. I've
So,
never heard Hollywood though. Yeah,
yeah. Well, okay. So, star athlete, bull
yeah.
rider, combat veteran. For our listeners who aren't familiar with your work, can you give us a little bit of your origin story?
Mm. Whew, I'm going to do my best to truncate this for your listeners. My origin story. Well, being a competitive athlete at a very young age, growing up around pros, I was forced into the position of learning how to focus, discipline my mind, my attentiveness to the skill sets, the training that I had, and I started to um, pay attention to the discernment of performance at a very young age, being a pitcher. So I played baseball for 13 years,
Oh,
and I
nice.
had a track towards potentially being a professional athlete. I was trained by the California Angels pitching staff at one point when I was younger. My dad was a semi 70s, so I grew up around guys like Rod Carew and Bo Jackson, Reggie Jackson. I met Mickey Mantle, so I was always in
Oh,
that space with these guys. Um, but as I got older, again, the pressures of being perfect and performing, it started to break, be excited about the game. Even though I loved playing the game and I knew I could potentially go make a living doing it, I think what I recognized, we talked about prior to getting on here, was the discernment of external pressure versus the natural pressures of being an athlete. And that, to me, was a clear indicator that I was playing the game for the um, expectation of others. I was playing it for what people thought of me. I was impressing my father and his friends rather than just being so immersed in the game because I loved it. I feel like
mhm.
it did not allow me to be the best version of myself. So I started to chase and seek out other avenues to expand who I was as a young man. And bull riding, I don't know, just naturally showed up in my lap. It's interesting how that worked out. So through those transitional processes of life altering experiences, I found new avenues of outlets for me to become a better version of myself, to challenge, to step into places of unknowns that scared me. And I started to chase that after half a decade of competitive bull riding. I was in the military, joined the Army with the 101st Airborne Division as a light infantry mortarman, went to combat, did 3 tours overseas, and in the throes of war, really discovered what it takes to truly stretch your to perform at the top of your game in the most chaotic of environments, and eventually got to the point where I recognized that I possessed a natural gift that I came to this world with, and I had the ability to lead people through the darkest, challenge them when life was the shit essentially hitting the fan, rather than when it was comfortable and it felt good or looked good to them. Got out of the military, started to chase the self mastery path. Wanted to know who I was without stress, without the demons that possessed, my ability to perform at the top of my own game personally, and then built a business around that gift. Doing this with leaders, powerful people, CEOs, celebrities, etc. And it has been the last 14 years. Radical performance acceleration has been my go-to mission on what it is I do out in the world today.
Nice. Where did
Yeah.
you grow up?
Southern California. So I grew up in Orange County. I was born and raised there, and then I lived in San Diego for a while. But those are my old stomping grounds.
So how'd the bull riding come in?
There are a lot of rodeo cowboys in California, believe it or not. I think there's so
Really?
many people that they hear that and they go, California. Well, now
No,
especially today with
I thought
how
you were gonna say
liberal it's
Texas.
become, how crazy it's become. People don't think rodeo, that wild, rough stock side of things. California, it's a mismatch. But in reality, is there are so many different areas in Southern California to ride bulls. Lake Elsinore, Canyon Lake, Norco, all those different areas. There are a lot of different ranches and rough stock, companies that own bulls and horses that you can get into. So I just started riding at 16 years old in Lake Elsinore, California, and fell in love with it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, my mom and dad have been obsessed with bull riding for a while and like gone to multiple events. They love it. And my mom used to always joke that like I would love bull riding, but she'd never want me doing it because of just how rough it is on the body.
It is.
And
Yeah.
I mean, that's outside of maybe MMA, and it might even be worse than MMA because like you're not fighting a
Mhm.
bull in MMA, you're
Mhm.
fighting another man, you know. But I think it's one of, if not the hardest sports on the body.
It
You've
is.
got you've got football where you can get hit by guys like Ray Lewis. You got bull riding, and you got like MMA. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much that.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I mean, it sounds like I grew up playing some competitive baseball too, and ended up. I mean, we took fourth in the country in AAU, lost to Hawaii, who ended up winning the whole thing when I was 12 or 13, and then I ate a baseball playing third base. Had like this freak
Oh yeah.
accident where there was a guy on
Mm.
third, but he was on the bag, and so I was just in a defensive position, and this freak moment, the pitcher just balked and decided to whip the ball over at me when I was like 5 feet off the bag, and I looked up at the last second and took a baseball in the jaw and broke my jaw, and then was pretty much focused on soccer from that point forward
Wow.
exclusively. But I remember some of those moments pitching where like I'd get in my head
Yeah.
and it was like you couldn't hit the fucking strike zone. Like if you
No.
mentally crashed on the mound, it was such a
Yep.
horrible, horrible feeling,
Yep.
and really tough to dig yourself out of. Like the closest thing I could compare it to is like when I lose it playing golf, and it's just like the round's over, you know. Um,
Yeah. On the tee box, a hole number two, right?
yeah, yeah.
Oh man.
It's pitching's like a very rare. It's a very rare spot in sports because it's difficult to get into flow state. It's so stop and go, and there's so much pressure on every pitch. You know,
Yeah.
is that some of what you were experiencing, and then bull riding allowed you to kind of get into that flow state, or like how could you differentiate between your baseball experience and like that chapter coming to an end and why it did, and then what was so appealing about bull riding?
Wow, you know what? You're the first person who's ever taken those two areas of my life and kind of blended them together because they have very similar concepts and approaches to the positions that you're in when you're a pitcher and a bull rider. So the answer to that question is, being a pitcher is difficult. Number one, you're in a leadership position for the team, so people are looking to you to set the tone for the performance when you're on offense, and excuse me, defense. And at the end of the day, it's amazing how when you are not in the zone, you find the correlation between being in your head, stuck in your head, and not being emotionally present causes that performance to slack. And I found that through training and practice, being aware of those moments in real time, slowing down the thinking just that extra second, breathing a little deeper, paying attention a little bit more acutely, changed my ability to get into a flow state as a pitcher, especially then when I started to recognize those blind spots. I would actually ask my coaches, why was I off? And they were able to give me this outside in approach so that the inside out of who I was can change the dynamic in my pitching abilities so that the next game or the next inning that I was able to go out on, I was able to take those lessons in that real time moment and apply them to be a better pitcher. And now parlaying that into bull riding, same thing. When you are a bull rider or any kind of rough stock athlete, they teach you about being present in all aspects of you, mentally, emotionally, physically, even spiritually. I mean, there was times I'd pray before I'd get on the back of one of those animals and get myself ready to strap down to call the
Every
gate
time
and come
I
out.
do it every time.
Every single time. So it's interesting is that what I found with both worlds was when you were too in your head, when you're too focused on the mental game, the rest of you suffers. Therefore, the
Hmm.
byproduct is your performance suffers. Bull riding
Hmm.
was a serious world for me to wake up to the fact that um, it requires you to embrace the fear of the unknown so that you can learn how to utilize that as a power source for your performance so that when you are able to sit on the back of a wild animal, you should be thinking, but you should also be not thinking. It's kind of a weird world for people to hear that. They go, how do you do that? Well, at the end of the day, it's not getting wrapped up in what might or might not happen when you call that gate, what
Hmm.
might not happen when you throw that pitch, what might
Hmm.
or might not happen when you pitch an offer in a business deal. And it comes back to the fact that we get too wrapped up in our heads in our society. And I think that's where people train more than anything is mental work. And they forget the rest of who we are as human beings. And then they wonder why their performance is not quite to the standard that they're looking to accomplish. So
Hmm.
that's the best way I can give that answer.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's almost like when you're training and drilling certain skills as it
Yeah.
relates to something that you're on the path to mastering, you can be in your head and you can integrate that, especially
Sure.
like as you're acquiring a new skill for the first time. But then eventually, as you walk the path to mastery, you want to get to that unconscious competence where you can actually where it's more kinesthetic and feeling and dare I say heart centered than head
Yes.
centered.
Yeah.
It's like I think of one of the coolest moments I've ever seen with this was, and we had him on the podcast early on, was, have you ever seen Laird Hamilton's ride of Chopu at,
No,
at,
but I know
at
Laird. I know the name.
yeah, I mean, he's one of the greatest big wave surfers of all time, and he
Mm,
rode this wave that no one had ever rode before,
that's right. Okay.
and had to get towed out there on the back of a jet ski, and right when his buddy who was towing him turned around to say, "Don't let go," he was already gone, and he's riding this wave, and the tidal wave that was so grand it started sucking him in, and
Yeah.
Laird like reached behind the board with his backhand and started dragging it in the water to keep himself from getting pulled under and just thrown against the shallow coral, and would have just died.
Yep.
And everybody, like the greatest surfers in the world, watch this video and they're like, there's no way you could have trained that. It's
No.
impossible. Like
No.
that's not something you drill. It's a level of connection and kinesthetic awareness that transcends training. It transcends the intellect, you know? And that's like, I don't know, it's just phenomenal. So
No,
if
that's
you guys haven't
phenomenal.
seen
That's a
that,
good way to put it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's in the movie Riding Giants. You can watch it
Oh
on
yeah. Okay.
YouTube.
I've heard of that movie. My dad was a surfer, so it's all kind of clicking now that you're saying that. But that's
Yeah, you'll like it. It's dope. And
well,
the
you make a good
pictures,
point. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, you make a good point. I just want to add to that real quick and just kind of go
yeah,
back to our
please.
conversation is, training in fundamentals, just like the military is when we do marksman fundamentals with weapon systems, it's all about slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You hear that constantly. People talk
Hmm.
about it in concept, but the reality is when you're allowing yourself to slow down in the training process, when you give yourself permission to surrender rigid thinking, and getting caught up in your own mindset about how you should be performing, it's amazing how when you're put in these positions like that wave, or you draw a wild bull that basically breaks every single cowboy that gets on the back of it, or you're facing a batter who's batting 400, who takes every pitcher yard, you don't get wrapped up in the fear of what could potentially happen to you. You actually are in the moment and you're allowing yourself to let whatever you trained for present itself, like he did with his backhand. He didn't think I should do this right now. He naturally just intuitively knew it was important because he felt the pressures. He was unaware that were going to present themselves, or maybe he was, and his body and his mind connected simultaneously, holistically, and that's what gave him that extra boost in performance. And I think what we're talking about here is people get wrapped up in asymmetrical growth in human performance. They get wrapped up in doing one thing great and forgetting the rest of who we are and what's possible for us that
Hmm.
supplies us more power and potential for the
Yeah.
accomplishments we're looking to get after.
Hmm. Absolutely. So in a second, I'm going to ask you about radical performance acceleration
Sure.
and how you define that and how it applies. But you sparked my interest on one more thing when you mentioned marksman training.
Yeah.
I've got three different guns, and I'm embarrassed at how few times I've shot them. But I'm curious, like for someone like me who knows the importance of being able to operate a firearm for self-defense and also just for fun and skill development. If you were to give like a Cliff Notes crash course on some of the key things that someone like myself would want to keep in mind when firing a gun that you have that when you teach people have the biggest impact that I could bring to the range or wherever when I get out with I've well, I won't talk about the guns I have, but anyway, like I'm kind of curious.
Okay. All right.
um, some are legal in some states and illegal
Sure.
in others.
Sure.
Um, so I'm curious though, what are some of the recommendations and things that you teach that are most helpful for people in getting good as a marksman, and training in that facility?
Oh, personally, and to be candid, I'm not a trainer in marksmanship, but I take the fundamentals of being a light infantry combat veteran. I'll bring this to the table. The basic fundamentals of marksmanship that I think you can parlay into other areas of your life is breathing, your ability to slow down your thinking, your ability to take aim and actually take a moment before you pull the trigger. That's one of the things is everybody wants to pull the trigger rather than squeeze the trigger. And you hear a lot of these experts, a lot of these former special operations guys that are out running these companies that do these types of trainings. Guys like Mike Glover from Fieldcraft Survival. You've got Tim Kennedy, all these other gentlemen. Um,
Hmm.
they are experts in training weapons marksmanship, but the basic fundamentals are ability to aim the weapon system, to slow down our breathing, to learn how to squeeze the trigger so that the round surprises you rather than you knowing when the
Mm,
round's going to go off. I think that's the
mm,
other thing is when you're able to slow down the breath and you're able to take aim properly and you're able to squeeze the trigger and let the round surprise you, more often than not, when you break that round down range, your muzzle recoil actually lessens. You're able to get back on target much quicker. So your time on
really?
target changes. So a lot of the guys that I know when I always qualified expert with my weapon systems, a lot of the guys that did not, the basic fundamentals were the fact that they were pulling the trigger too fast and they weren't breathing properly. They were
Mm,
rushing the process because they were so in their head trying to be the best expert shooters. They're the ones that suck the most. But when you
mm,
slow down and take that extra half a second, slow down the breath just enough, hold the breath, maybe inhale halfway and hold it, or exhale halfway and hold it. With the sight on target in the timing you have when you squeeze a trigger, it becomes faster and more lethal for you. That goes back to that element of slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I look back in my life and go, wow, if I'd have learned all these fundamentals at a younger age, how much better could I have been as a pitcher or a bull rider? But you know what? That's okay. The military taught me so much more about myself after going through those life altering experiences, dealing with family dynamics of stress, confronting realities that weren't allowing me to be my best. I took into the combat arms MOS that I did, and then from there brought it into my life. And everything that I've ever done from that point forward was put myself in the most radical, uncomfortable positions, get people that I cannot control to challenge and push me, because that's the only way I'm actually going to transform myself from the inside out holistically. And that's what I was able to do. And everything I put my mind to now is slowing down. Even running my new podcast, it's like I slow down, take a breath, and I allow myself to squeeze the trigger without getting caught up in my own head, because I want to produce something that hits the target consistently every single time.
and what is the name of your podcast?
Oh, Wise Words and Whiskey with Wiley McGraw. Low key conversations on high performance living.
Nice. Do you drink
Yeah.
whiskey while you record?
Yes, we do.
Dang,
I
that sounds
sent,
great.
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
love to come on.
Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards. But you know what's great about it is I send a bottle of whiskey to all my guests, and it's not about getting drunk. It's about educating people using whiskey as kind of like the icebreaker, where we kick back, relax. It's not scripted. It's all about just having authentic conversations on a very specific point that unpacks wise words around what it takes to live a high performance life. I've got guests, like Sean Merriman from the Chargers coming on. I've got General Petraeus, General Mike Flynn might be coming on the show. I've got, C.J. Wilson from the Angels, Johnny Damon. So I've got some really cool guests. Shea Hillenbrand
Nice.
coming on the show as well eventually, and I've had some other really cool people. Again, that's what it's all about. But bringing people on at different variables of high performance living that I can share with people in the audience.
Dope, dope. So, guys, if
Yeah.
you enjoyed this conversation, go subscribe to Wise Words and Whiskey and check out some of those conversations. All right. So, tell me about radical performance acceleration.
You know, it's interesting is I've had these questions asked so many times, and the best way I can describe it is the words that I use for my business have all come from the clients that I've worked with. Everything that I've ever done has I have no idea what marketing or what I was going to do. I just knew that I had a gift. I had an ability to accelerate people's personal and professional performance. I started working with combat veterans, being a combat vet myself. I did my tours in Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq, got out, and started working with other veteran leaders where I would have them come live with me. I would stay with them in their life is happening to them. We would push them through battling personal demons, the things that they dealt with, dealing with the stresses that plagued them. And it's amazing how I started to notice the acceleration that was taking place. And my clients would start to say, hey, Wiley, I feel this is like the most radical thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And then we just decided, we got to build something around this to present to the world. So why don't we use the words that your clients are using? Radical, performance, acceleration, this all the different words came together. So we started the business from that point. But at the end of the day, Anthony, it's like titles, labels don't really matter to me. It's truly a mission that I've been on, is someone who can get into the trenches, into the nuanced blind spots, the dark corners of these people's lives, battle and slay their personal demons, and push them in positions that other people are unwilling to go to, became the birthing of Radical Performance Acceleration as a full-blown lifestyle, customized, intimate experience, working individually one-on-one with powerful people that are in positions of authority and leadership, so that their lives become optimal and they can turn around and have an uplifting impact on the masses that they lead.
Nice. How do you define demon?
Well, I mean, we can get into the literal sense, but the unrelenting stresses that are hindering people unconsciously, consciously, emotionally, mentally, from past life traumas, stresses, even the fact that maybe we're considering the esoteric side of things too, where they're truly being impacted by things that they cannot see or cannot control. So I look at it from a holistic standpoint where people are truly looking to erupt and get rid of what plagues them. I just label those as demons, and that's where I go. I go into the places that therapists won't go, that coaches and gurus won't touch.
Yeah.
I have no problem saying things that highly unconventional, highly basically unknown to others. That, well, why did you do and say that? Why are you even going that place? It's because that is the very thing that people are afraid to look at. Even the most
Yep.
successful of people, I'm willing to go and push and poke at, and a lot of people are afraid to actually have that happen to them. So that's how I define it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had some great conversations. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences in my life and with clients and with friends and family members, and we've even had conversations on this podcast. I'm certain that there are dimensions that are outside of our senses and our ability
Yeah.
to see, but that very much influence our psyche. And
Absolutely.
if you just look at, and it's very much hidden. You won't see it talked about a lot in anything mainstream, but in countries like Brazil, for example, their main treatment for schizophrenia is exorcism,
Yes.
and it has an 80% success rate, which is more than any treatment utilizing Western medicine for schizophrenia.
Right.
And there's a really good book called, I think it's like An Amazing Journey Inside the Psychotic Mind, that goes into this and documents a lot of cases throughout history. And it's worth exploring, because I mean, some people may be listening and going like, oh, these two have lost it, I'm listening to a bunch of nutbags. But and I would have probably said that too a few years ago, but the things that
Sure.
I've seen and the stories very much say otherwise. And I think if we're in a paradigm or even a false binary where we look at mental illness as a chemical problem and not something of spiritual origin, or at least we're not willing to consider the spiritual origin or the other dimensions that could be contributing to what we call mental illness, we're going to fail to properly treat these challenges.
Yes. Why do you think right now, and this is a good point, just we have spent $20 billion, I think, in the National Institute of Health put out a study over the last 10, 20 years, I think, somewhere around that range. Again, you don't quote me on that, on mental health remedies and solutions. And yet we have a rise in mental health problems in society. So you consider, how are we spending all this money and not solving the problem? Why is it only getting worse? So, and if you look at personal development, it's the same way. Why is the personal development industry making 60, 70, $100 billion a year, and yet we have millions of people still stuck trying to chase what's next, trying to figure out why they're not getting where they want to go? It's because they're not solving the problems from a holistic approach. They're not looking at the individual lives that they're impacting from a nuanced place where it's like systems, processes, protocols have their place, but they do not take into consideration dynamics, relationship dynamics from a mental, emotional, spiritual aspect. And what they do is they try to problem solve from a limited notion of scientific evidence, from the thinking mind, and they don't know what's really going on with the individual until they actually are willing to get into that person's life. But again, if you're selling a multi-million dollar business oriented program to the masses, why would you be able to do that? You know, you're not going to individualize those people to get to their problems. You're going to say, well, here's what I've got for you, go get a therapist if you have those problems. And then we just have a never ending process of human beings feeling stuck in life and nothing really gets resolved, yet industries grow in the billions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, what I'm observing is a weaponization of mental health,
Sure.
and what I believe to be, this is my opinion here, a deliberate creation of situations that will cause mental health issues. And I think if you just look at one little silo that we've been pretty vocal about warning people about, and I mean, this show started getting banned when I started talking about 5G and EMF and its
Huh.
effect on mental health, and how it is basically the digital control grid that can be used to track everything. And when it is plugged in with a digital ID and VaxPass and your bank account and a central bank CBDC, like central banking digital currency, it's the ultimate slavery system. And that's where we're headed if people don't wise up and start unplugging from the fucking matrix. And then when you look at the biological aspect of it, these things actually, like this radiation causes our voltage gated calcium channels to get jammed open. Our cells get flooded with calcium ions and therefore free radicals, particularly peroxynitrate, that damage our mitochondria. They affect our ability to produce feel good neurotransmitters. We get fatigued. We feel like shit. We're apathetic and our health deteriorates. And I say this again as a warning because we're headed towards a mass extinction event if people don't wise up. And I right now I see the majority of people running off a cliff. And I think there's a lot involved there, but part of it is a lack of discernment, which I'm going to ask you to kind of shed some light on.
Yeah, buddy.
I think there's also I mean there's a tremendous amount of mind control techniques going on that of course through our devices, but also that start in school and giving us these false paradigms in which we actually start to enslave ourselves with our way of thinking.
Yeah.
And I guess, can you talk a little bit about discernment and you mentioned it's the weakest attribute of humans and why it matters, because I agree.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'm glad we're going down this rabbit hole because you have absolutely hit it on the head with how disassociated technology has made people from the discernment muscle that allows us to identify threats or assets. I use those two categories, and it's funny because you talk about the impact that technology has on us, but what does the industry teach people? Well, as long as you don't feel it, nothing's happening to you. And that's the discernment differentiation there is people think, well, if I don't feel something happening, then there is no effect on me. And it goes to our technology, EMF and all that is a frequency that I even talked about too with some friends of mine, where the EMF that comes off something doesn't actually affect you. It's the harmonics when it bounces off other objects that creates the distorted frequency that interacts with your mitochondria. Your cells starts distorting your body's ability to regulate its own electrical system. And we can go down that crazy rabbit hole, of course, but the discernment of what is really taking place versus what is not is weakened by the abuse and the addiction to technology, to the idea that nothing's actually happening to us. This same notion that, well, why would they do that to us? Why would anyone want us to be caught up in this type of rat race? And then they create these like ideas of conspiracy theory where that's not actually happened. You're crazy, and then we get wrapped up in a maelstrom of the belief that we're in a good place. As long as you keep swimming in this circle, you're in a good place because you're not aware of what's really going on with you. Now, here's the thing.
Lets you keep your comfort a little bit longer.
Right. Then they want you there. But here's the thing. What ends up happening is you build a muscle of believing if something looks different, sounds different, or makes you very uncomfortable, it's a threat to you. So anything that shows up in your life that starts to challenge that rabbit hole you're in, you want to fight, push away, or look at it as, again, it goes to, what's that movie we watched? It's called Idiocracy, where he shows up in the future and he starts talking normal. And because they're so conditioned into that dysfunction, they think he's the weirdo and they try to attack and get rid of him. It's the same thing going on right now where even the highest level people that I've worked with, from the celebrities and the athletes and the CEOs, when we first meet, they're not used to the way I speak, as they think it's an approach. And it's not an approach. I'm just having a real conversation with you. I'm just telling you truth you've never heard before. I'm poking at things you actually have never looked at. And they're so used to how it's supposed to sound, how it's supposed to look, what it's supposed to be, that when something different shows up, we don't discern whether or not this is an actual asset to me or it's a threat. And the discernment I tell people is, consider the timing of when something shows up, a piece of information, a support system, a loved one, whatever you are hearing. Consider the timing, consider the situation, and why it might be actually happening in that moment. And you might start to be able to reinvigorate your discernment muscle to know, okay, maybe this is showing up because I'm supposed to lean into this and actually go this route rather than being stuck where I'm at.
Yeah. And also, if it's someone you've known for
Right.
a long time,
Right.
they probably haven't gone crazy. I'm amazed at how many
Yeah.
people are willing to go there just to like discredit something that makes them uncomfortable. It's like
Sure.
you've known this person for 35 years. Do you think they just suddenly went nuts, or do you think maybe they're trying to help you?
Right. Right. And then why did your friend introduce you to Anthony? Why did this person introduce you to Wiley? Why is it showing up to you in the timing it is? Isn't it interesting how you called out for help? I want to change my life. I want to know better. I want to know more. And then something different shows up in your life and you go, oh, you know what? It doesn't look the way I thought it was going to look. So I'm going to push it away. I mean, that parlays into everything we are as a society. And it all goes back to the human performance element of who you are, how you operate in relationship to the people around you, and to the things that we are given in society to operate our lives, like technology.
Can you expound a little bit on this thought? I've seen this a great deal where there's
Sure.
people that resonate with some of the things I talk about. They're like, "Thank you so much for talking about that," because like I totally agree. I just can't because I'd lose like half of my customers. It would really affect my business. And I'm like, okay, so you're willing to be quiet about the ushering in of a literal slavery system so you can make some extra money?
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how to articulate what's going on there. Is it a lack of courage? Is it making money your god? Is it like what's going on, and how are people enslaving themselves by because a lot of this stuff, like there's I believe that human awareness shapes reality. And you can take things that would otherwise occur, and if enough people see it and call it out, it can actually prevent it from happening. But not if we're fucking cowards, or we're
Mm-hmm.
afraid that, oh, it might cut my revenue in half, or I might
Right.
lose, some of the people that would otherwise buy my shit. What's
Yeah.
going on there in your opinion, and have you observed that?
Well, I'll start with
Because I mean,
human
you and I
aware.
are over here talking
Yeah.
about demons and stuff, so we're
Yeah.
clearly all right letting it rip.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, human awareness shapes our perspective of reality. I think that's what it starts with is people walk around with the idea that we are again, it's become so secular and so individualized. We have the occult, this idea that we're all in it for ourselves first. We can create our own world and our reality, and we disconnect and disassociate from standards and values and morals, all for the sake of making sure our livelihoods are met and taken care of first. We don't trust in the ability to live by a standard or have a value that might rattle people. It might change people's ability to relate to us in the way that we would hope they would. So the awareness muscle has been reduced, it's been atrophied. So what people do is they succumb to um, everything at all costs. It's the same thing with social media. How many followers do you have? How much money do you make? It's the metrics that define success in our reality are enslaving people to limitation. So what it comes down to is it's holistic. People are living way too secular. There's no faith in the long game. It's a short game play. So what they're
Hmm.
willing to do is sacrifice standards. They're willing to sacrifice values. They're willing to sacrifice relationship, the relationships that matter, for the sake of some superficiality from a bottom line standpoint, from people liking them. The problem really comes down to the fact that people do not trust that they will actually have their needs met if they surrender um, just making money at all costs. So the
Hmm.
best way, how do I say it like this, is I've worked with these leaders that they feel the same way. They go, you know what, I built this 8-figure, 9-figure, 10-figure business, but I'm unsatisfied, I'm burned out, I'm at my wit's end, but I'm afraid to confront because if I do, I will lose half my customer base. It was like, well, what matters to you more? Do you like living a life in pain, or are you willing to finally let go and actually live the life you say you want to live and experience optimization so your relationships thrive, your health is good, your focus is clear, you're living through a standard that matters to you, even if it means alienating half your customer base or pissing people off? You show me a man who has no enemies, and I'll show you a man who's never stood for shit. So at the end of the day, I think people are afraid to create like real polarizing. They say it in concept. It's like, I'm a polarizing force. No, you're not. I'm the revolution. No, you're not. Because if everybody likes you and everybody's kind of like, you're not whatsoever. You've got to be willing to alienate and rattle people. I'm all about rattling souls, unfucking lives, pissing
Yeah.
people off so they can experience the eradication, the eruption of their own demons, so they can see that they've been living a limitation. And here's the last story I'll give to you on that point. There's a gentleman I spoke to, a former pro baseball player. We had an hour-long conversation. He was a major league all-star, World Series champion, and he says, Wiley, I got to tell you, believe it or not, in the professional baseball world, a lot of us were only performing at 60 to 70% of our true potential. He goes, everybody on the outside sees us making millions of dollars, and we think we're living the good life. He goes, but the majority of guys, they're cheating on their wives, they're on drugs, they're stressed, they're suffering, and all they're doing is like just chasing the high so they can stay at that 60 to 70%. And the reason why is because the managers and the team owners are also living that kind of shit life. So at the end of the day, it trickles downhill. And if we would have known what it takes to be 100%, it would require those managers and team owners to pay us more money, and they just don't want to do that. So it's like this unfortunate oppression at even the highest of levels. So all these leaders and powerful people believe they're living their best life, and then they preach that to the world. What they're really doing is infecting others with limitation. And it goes all the way back to what you just said. The reality of perception changes, it distorts, and people then believe this is just what it means to be human. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I like that. Let's talk a little bit about the mentality of biohacking in your observation,
Sure.
because I
What
see
would
I
you
see
like to?
both I see both sides. I see
Yeah.
both sides of the extreme. Like I've actually distanced myself more so from biohacking in recent years because I see it very much going down a transhumanism path in a lot of cases, and I see a lot of people that believe biohacking is about shortcuts.
Yes.
Whereas my perspective is you want the straightest path to a desired outcome. And I don't particularly identify with any discipline. I want the most effective way of safely bringing about a desired health outcome.
Right.
Whether that comes from traditional Chinese medicine or Western medicine or Ayurveda or whatever it is,
Yeah.
but you do see a lot of people get into it because they're like, oh, I'd much rather work out for 2 minutes than 40 minutes. Yeah. Is that what biohacking's about? All right, let's do it, and so, I mean,
Oh
I'm
man.
curious, what's your observation of biohacking and sort of the mentality there?
I had this conversation with Dave Asprey a few years ago. It's funny, we're talking about the same thing where people are starting to hack what biohacking is. It's kind of like they take this idea that you're right. It means shortcuts. It means cheating. I had a guy a friend of mine who runs a cryotherapy place with red light therapy, a full oxygenated cryo chamber. We were talking this morning. He's like, it sounds like cheating. And I said, it does, doesn't it? People believe hacking means I'm going to shortcut my way to better performance. I'm going to be a better version of myself if I can find the cheat codes, if you will. But I think what it comes down to is people are afraid to do the hard work.
Yeah.
People are afraid to look at the ugly shit that they have swept under the rug their entire life. They don't want to feel what real discomfort actually feels like. They want to conceptualize discomfort. It's the same thing with studied all the different medicines, Chinese medicine, my undergrads in alternative medicine, from psychology, etc. There is no shortcuts to living a fully optimal life. If you try to shortcut yourself to something using, let's say, psychedelics, you're going to leave chips on the table. But it's been baked into the marketing that if we do it this way, you're going to actually experience what it is you say you want. You're going to have the wealth, you're going to have the impact, you're going to have the life, you're going to have the cars, you're going to look like the beast. You're going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger if you take these supplements and do it this way. And the problem is that's only one piece to it. Those should be adjuncts to people's ability
If
to
by
do the hard work.
supplements you mean a tremendous amount of testosterone.
Sure, if you're out, yeah, exactly. Androsten and all the different types of NF8 and all, yeah. We cycle through those things. But I've worked with people that have been on those supplements, and they're like, oh, I thought it was going to take me where I wanted to go, and they're still living very miserable lives because they have not done the work to better who they are from the inside out. I had a client, former Wall Street guy, who thought he's a big hacker, traveled the world. He follows every. He did Dave Asprey's 40 years of Zen. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And but he was like this constantly in his head, and he's like, okay, what's next? What's next? Spending all this money, and he was a wealthy guy. Decided to become a coach, and when we met at an event in Mexico, he was like, I need to know what it takes to truly like actually do the right things to better my life. And when we started working together, he said, I decided I'm going to do psychedelics, and I said, well, we're not in the place for that yet. We've got resources. I said, look,
odd blanket statement.
I told him, I said, look,
he probably read Stealing Fire and was just
did.
like, oh,
thank you so much. That was a damn book he even told me about. And I said, hold on a second. You know what? Here's the deal. When I work with
clown show shit.
When I work with a client, when a leader, when a CEO, when a celebrity calls, when they're ready to do the work that I put them through, they understand this is a relationship dynamic in a very intense, intimate container. I live with, travel with you. I'm with you 24/7, upwards of a year. I'm your battle buddy. I'm in the trenches. And I bring to the table 40 plus specialists across the realm of human performance where if we need to use psychedelics, it's in the right timing when you're ready for it. At the end of the day, he ended up doing a month worth of psychedelics, Kimbo frog poison, DMT, ayahuasca, mushrooms. And when we had dinner in New York, he was this disheveled, unrecognizable version of himself. And he literally admitted, I don't even know what memories are real or not. I don't trust what it is that I witnessed when I went to those dimensions. And I said, I needed to let you have that latitude so you can realize you were not prepared to do it. But our culture right now in America, we're talking about this evidence of hacking. It's like, well, the problem is nobody's truly ready for it. But we're being told that it has value. So what do Americans do? Well, I want the shortcut. I want the hack. So I'm going to take the psilocybin because I'm going to figure out how to become a more enlightened version of myself. And the reality is you're just trying to bypass the truth. You're just afraid of looking at your own shit. You got to do the real work. It's like getting an astronaut ready to go into space and being improperly prepared and giving him the wrong suit. Yeah.
And also, I think a number of these substances, I think there's so many layers to this. You have what's going on with all of a sudden weed is legal and everywhere, and
oh my God,
the weed dispensaries are all becoming centralized, owned by the same people, and now everybody's flying around the world and doing ayahuasca. A lot of these substances, and I learned some of this the hard way.
Sure.
We got invited to go do ayahuasca. I did podcasts on it. That shit opens up other dimensions, whether you know it or not. And if you are not spiritually prepared, and if you don't have a good relationship with God, the creator, you could open yourself up to some real shit. Then you go a little bit deeper and you look at the CIA and a lot of these government agencies have been using psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin, etc., to fucking program people and make you more susceptible to mind control technology, So we got this situation where people are locked in their homes, staring at their television, smoking weed, doing psychedelics. Is it any wonder that they can't see what the fuck is going on for the past 3 years?
Yeah. You remember that, you're talking about, you said God and being connected to faith and having this like understanding of what is going on, why you want to use those substances. I tell people all the time is, if you want to use a substance, have you ever stopped to consider why you want to use the substance right now, in this moment? What are you looking to accomplish? Well, I love getting high. There's nothing wrong with it. Actually, there is something wrong with it. The fact that you need to get high, the fact that you want to get high, it's superficial. Why do you want to do it? What's really going on within you that makes you feel like you should excuse cannabis as a daily substance to ingest? The problem is it does take you into different dimensions, and most people, if not all people, are unready for, and they're going to meet demons. They're going to meet sides of themselves that they're unaware exist because they have not done the work to experience and face what really is going on. And we have people full of trauma, like combat veterans. It's like every veteran I ever worked with, I didn't need to put them on psychedelics so they can experience a transformative effect of the work we were doing to face the demons that plagued them from combat. I didn't need to do that. Now, some of them were in the position where I had to reach out to resources and say, hey, they're a bad case. I got to do a little bit here to help push them through that threshold. But the reality is science right now is teaching us that these are the tools that we can get people through the trauma they've experienced. And I have personally experienced in the last 14 years that we're doing my work with these people is that you can actually go further than you think doing the work without outside effects from psychedelics and pharmaceuticals first, and then you can sprinkle in these resources as needed when that person has a stronger foundation of who they are, so they can be ready for it. And people are like, well, Andrew Huberman says it's okay for me. Okay, but are you ready for it? Truly, are you ready for it? And I am very much afraid for humanity right now because cannabis is becoming legal. I think it's bad. I think it's bad for people to be smoking weed every single day. I think the argument that it's a plant, it's natural, is bullshit. At the end of the day, there's something demonic going on that's causing people to believe this to be a benefit for their lives. And they're toxifying their systems. I worked with an A-list celebrity, this young gal, who she did the same thing. She was just constantly in an ayahuasca kick, and she was angry and fried and like never understood why it wasn't helping her, and she kept chasing it. I'm like, well, your publicist called me because you couldn't find anything to stop the madness. So when I came to her life and stripped her away from that, she realized she became addicted to it. She actually did not realize she was being pulled into demonic type of environments in those dimensions, and she was actually being stimulated by the concept in her head that she was getting somewhere when in fact she was actually spinning in circles. And that's the problem, is people don't recognize it. And then when somebody from the outside says, stop it, they go, get the fuck away from me. You don't know who you are. Who are you to judge me? And then that's the problem we end up finding ourselves in.
Totally. I'll condense this story to like 60 seconds, but I think it's relevant because I don't want to just talk about this conceptually.
Sure.
I want to give, like, there was a number of different experiences that people around me had, and then it really culminated. I had done ayahuasca in Costa Rica. We did some podcasts on it. I had a pretty good experience, although there was some weird shit that went on. Then I found that I felt really good for 2 or 3 months and then kind of needed more, right? And I was actually going to a Wim Hof event, and I had a car full of people, and there was a couple in the car with me, and they're like, hey, we're doing ayahuasca ceremonies. Do you want to do one? And I was like, yeah, I do. And I'm like, have you guys been doing this a while? And they're like, no, not really. But we got to hook up, and, you know, our shaman sends it up to us and we do it. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, just totally like laissez-faire about it. And I told it to my brother, and my brother's actually in Peru right now. He's been studying like an earth-based shamanic path, no drugs, you know, like he's hiking Machu Picchu today, very much just connecting to the earth, the plants, the animals, other people, that sort of thing. And he said to me, and he's like, I don't think you're giving this medicine the respect it deserves. And you're doing it with people that do not have the spiritual strength or experience to close the circle. And on top of that, you doing this in your home is reckless. Like you're opening up a portal in the place that you live. And I was like, I'm good, man. I'm going to pray. It's going to be fine. A couple came over as one of the guys that was working with me was leaving. His girlfriend was picking him up. He messages me and he's like, is that couple, are they like swingers or something? What's going on with them? They seem kind of weird. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not swinging with them. We're just going to do plant medicine, you know, in my living room. We ended up doing, you know, we start drinking some ayahuasca, and they're feeling it, and I'm not. I had a pretty high tolerance for that stuff. Drank more. Finally, like, kind of went into a trance and was, you know, almost sleeping, but like in that other world type experience. I wake up and this dude is massaging me, and I'm like, "What are you doing, man?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm doing energy work. I'm doing body work." And I was like, "I'm good, bro. I'm good. Please stop doing that." You know. My brother later told me that you're not supposed to touch anyone when you're on that stuff because there's an energetic transfer that is even more profound, especially on these substances, right? Yeah. So I came out of it, finished that experience. They left. Within a week, I had this. I was in bed. I'd gone to sleep. I wake up, and it's a little after midnight. And it was like my brain had been hijacked. That's the only way that I could explain it. It was like, it was like I had this loop that was basically telling me to kill myself. I'd never experienced that before, never happened like in my life. And it was literally and I know this will sound crazy to people, but I'm being honest because I fucking know for a fact there's a lot of people here that have experienced thoughts that they have considered, oh, that's my thought, but it
Yep.
doesn't make sense. I've never thought that way. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
I think to me, there was a demon in my head,
Sure.
and it was saying, just just go get your gun and
Eh.
blow your brains out.
Yep.
Just go take your little dog, put him in the other room. You know, this was a Thursday night, so the guy that works with me was coming over the next day. We had work and everything like that. It was like, put a sign on your door, let it say, "Don't come in here, call the cops, and just blow your brains out." And I
Yep.
was sitting there and I'm like, what is going on right now? I'm like, these
Hmm.
are not my thoughts. These are not
No.
my thoughts. And I had actually had an experience with a Belgian doctor where we were talking about the spiritual realm. And he had shared an experience where he had an entity come into the room with him, and his whole body became frozen. He was paralyzed and he couldn't move. And I was
Yep.
like, "What'd you do?" And he goes, "When this happens, you must pray. You must pray to God,
Hmm.
Jesus,
Hmm.
Archangel Michael,
Hmm.
Archangel Gabriel. You must call on the angels. You must call on their help, and you must tell the demon to get out."
Hmm.
And I remembered that conversation, and I just got goosebumps talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I prayed like I had never prayed before. I'm in bed just letting it rip for like 30 minutes to where I was completely exhausted at the end.
Yeah,
And
brother.
after like 30
Yep.
or 40 minutes of nonstop prayer, I fell back asleep. I wake up at like 3 a.m. My out of a dead sleep, I wake up and my chest is in the air like a fucking exorcism movie. My whole back is arched. And I'm like looking down in disbelief that this is going on. And for like 5 seconds, I'm stuck in that position, and then I collapse.
Hmm.
And it never happened again.
Yep.
It was fucking wild, dude.
So
And
we
so I
are,
never did ayahuasca again.
good. Good. Here's
I
the
don't
thing.
think I've told that story on the podcast. I've told
Well, I'm glad
a couple people, but like you got to give context to this shit about
sure,
how it shapes your
sure.
perspective, you know, and why I
Well, we
don't do
are,
that stuff anymore.
we are. You know, what's funny is human beings are fucking with things that they have no business messing with, and then it's so secular. Everybody believes that as long as they can taste, touch, see, feel, and hear it, then it exists. But at the end of the day, who are we? It's like the hubris of mankind is really astonishing. The
Hmm.
idea that we think we know, we just know, we're just aware of it because, again, it sounds crazy and kooky, but when you immerse yourself into the world of faith and understand that there are forces that we have cannot comprehend that are at play here.
Hmm.
These things that you're experiencing, I've heard time and time again. And it's interesting. As I listened to a guy is a Christian, a Catholic, and he was talking about how he did the same thing where he was on drugs, but he was a man of faith, but he was on the side living a life of sin, and he had all these different. He was living two worlds, and he got in his car, burned out one night. Long story short, he heard a voice in his head, being burned out after doing drugs all these years. He heard a voice in his
Hmm.
head said, "Take your hands off the wheel; it'll be okay." And he took his
Hmm.
hands off the wheel and he went headfirst into the with his car into a tree, and it killed him. And he said, I was 20 feet above my car, looking down at the wreck. I had chains around my neck, I had chains around my arms and my legs, and I heard this high pitched scream, I got him, I got him, I got him, he's mine." And he said, like, and I realized, and then suddenly I went to full free fall, and I started to smell sulfur, and I started to experience the screams, and this, I could just hear pain of millions of different voices, and this thing screaming, I got him, I got him. And he goes, I realized, oh, something's not right. And he said, all I started to do was ask God, why? Why? And it suddenly was like, here's what I did wrong. Here's where my problem is. But then I got pulled out of it because I was supposed to come back apparently and share the story with people. And then another person said the same thing in their story. And then another person said the same thing in their story. So I'm just relating that to your story because the reality is when you're not in the right container, when you're not understanding what it is you're doing, when you just take things at face value rather than spending time in connection to understanding what is presenting itself to you, you can truly lead yourself down a very dark path. And I think hacking ourselves using drugs, using cannabis, using pharmaceuticals, finding things that make us comfortable is why we are, in fact, in a position of limitation, and we could potentially going down the wrong path, and why we're suffering in our lives on a daily basis. And our leadership are the biggest culprits because they're out in the world doing the same thing. Behind the curtain,
Hmm.
they're doing stupid shit, and then they're out in the world trying to tell people, well, this is what life is supposed to look like, and they're infecting others with their own demons. And that's the biggest
Hmm.
problem that I've witnessed for the last 14 years.
Yeah, I've a lot of the things like when I span out and look at what's been going on here, and probably throughout human history, but especially there's an acceleration these past few years, and I
Yes.
think certain medical experiments contribute. I think certain portals, the black mirrors of our television and our computer and our phones that can completely sway our perspective of reality.
Yes.
I sort of see what's going on as an attempt to harvest souls and
It is.
the people that you get to poison themselves and participate in nonsense and take their life and listen to the voice of demons and believe it's themselves, there may very well be a component where these entities are trying to collect souls, like
Hmm.
your buddy. I got him, I got another one, right? And more than ever, like when I was very tactical about how do we get out of this for a while, and
Yep.
I'm like, we got to start homesteading. We need to be less reliant on the monetary system and the conveniences and all of their different control systems in the power grid and blah 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 blah. And then I was like, nah, we need to connect to God,
Hmm.
and we need to start. I think the greatest weapon that we actually possess is not tactical, it's prayer. And it's collective prayer. It's us coming together and
Yep.
finding a way. And
Yep.
anyone listening to this that feels inspired, I think we need ways to pray on a similar frequency with a similar intention at the same time, and to unify
Yep.
ourselves in that manner. I think that's how we win. I don't think it's
I agree.
homesteading.
I agree, and to add to that, brother, the fact is we need to educate people on more of what words, phrases, and prayer actually means and looks like, because our society has moved away from God because they hear words like subservience, or they hear words like worship, and they think it means tyranny. They think it's tyrannical to have that. But you think about father. Father is not enslavement; it's loving direction. We just have
Hmm.
not been
Hmm.
taught properly to understand. I think God is the greatest hack we have. But at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
it's like we need people to lean in to understand there's more to it than what we've been taught as a society. And that's why I think religion itself and spirituality get a very different and bad name. And people get caught up in the occult that's basically demonic, because what's happening is,
Hmm.
of course, the devil's going to tell you, you want what you want? Sure, I'll give you information. The devil was a damn angel, for God's sake. At the end of the day, of course he can bring light to your life. Of course
Hmm.
that you want, like the tools like ayahuasca. Yeah, you want to know who yourself. Here's the truth. Here, let me
Hmm.
show you. Let me give you the money you seek. Let me give you the freedom you want. You should live your life based on what you want. Live your life as free as possible. Love is love. No, it's not. At the end of the day, there is improper love, and people are trying to figure out how they can get back to a good path. And our conversation here, hopefully, is stimulating people's thinking too, to go, you got to stop. I look at the whole spiritual community from you know, um, again, the other side, I look at it as a very much a life hack as well, that people are misusing and improperly experiencing, and they are leaning heavily into energy work and shamans and tarot readings and
Hmm.
things. And anything that tells you the future is dangerous. At the end of the day, you're not supposed to know these things. You're supposed to walk by faith, no matter what that faith looks like, and connect to something that can truly give you the life you seek. That's why people like us, the work that I do is a mission. I slay demons. It sounds
Hmm.
crazy to people, but that's how I'm built. I will walk through fire and come back. I've had clients call me, if Constantine had a baby, it's like Neo's characters. Constantine had a baby with Neo from the Matrix, it would be what I do, and that's truly what I do. This is not about
Hmm.
making money. This is not about looking cool. This is not about my notoriety. Mission that I've been on. It's a gift that I possess. I'm here to tell people, stop hacking your way to success. Start
Hmm.
actually battling your own demons, because if you do
Hmm.
and you eradicate them with the right support, who's in the fucking trenches with you like a battle buddy, I'm telling you, you'll
Hmm.
be able to win the war within, and you'll be able to experience what Anthony and I are talking about right now, which is a fulfilled life.
Hmm. Hmm. and
That's
and
my
and
fact.
it's putting in the reps the same
Yeah.
way that like you go to the gym and you do
Yep.
reps and sets of an exercise. Prayer builds an armor, and the more that you do it and the more that you connect throughout the day, the more you get to a point where you go, I can look a fucking demon in the eye and know that I am protected because I have the power of God and his army behind me. I can look
Yep.
the devil in the eye and I won't be afraid because I know that I have the power of God and his army of angels behind me. And like that's where we need to get. It's
Yeah.
not about building your six pack. It's about recognizing, you know, I realized that it was fairly ineffective to tell people that masks don't work. You know, it was an intellectual approach to what was a I was reacting to the fact that like you guys are participating in a fucking satanic ritual and you don't even know it. You're putting masks on your face and washing your hands, and you've been tricked into participating in a big satanic ritual. They don't work. Take it the fuck off and stop. You know, and that's kind of where that's discernment. It's
Yeah.
recognizing what's truly going on. And then, oh, you like the Super Bowl halftime show? Good. Do you like watching satanic rituals? Because that's what you're doing. Wake the fuck up. Go
Hmm.
watch it again. You know what I mean? Like it's obvious. It's obvious, and I've done it too.
Wow.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I listen to some Drake. I listen to some of the Weekend. You know, but it's pretty obvious that a lot of these guys are doing the work of the dark side,
Well, they're even
whether they
admitting
know
it
it or
on
not.
camera. Well, they're admitting it on camera
Yeah,
now. Katy
of
Perry
course.
to what's that popular girl's name? I don't even. It's Taylor Swift. All said, "I sold my soul." So at the end of the
Yeah,
day,
they all say it. They all say
it's
it.
like they just come. And honestly, if you think about what's going on here, not to get too far off the beaten path here, but if you think what's going on, if you actually observe how crazy things are getting with everything in our culture right now, it's like evil is just going. I know I'm about to lose, so I'm just going to rip it all off and kind of come all out full force. And people
Hmm.
are being pulled into it. And you know what's funny? People will listen to this too and go, "Oh, these guys are full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about."
Good.
This is yeah. You know what? You want a
Go somewhere
biohacking
else.
secret?
Go somewhere else.
You want a biohacking secret? I got a biohacking secret. Yeah, you need to get back to the core principles of faith and grounding yourself and facing your own reality and your own truth. And that's the thing
Yeah.
is, it's like I was on a podcast in Vegas earlier this week, and the guy that ran it was a digital social hour, Sean Kelly, and he says, why do these people come to you? And I said, the ones that do come to me, the ones that I talk to and I have a relationship with and I spend months with before we've even decided to work together, are those types of powerful people in positions like that, celebrities, etc., that can feel far beyond the superficial and they can recognize,
Yeah.
okay, they can discern. Wiley's here because it's time for me to get unfucked. It's time for me to face my demons once and for all and actually do the real work because they crave deep down inside the real them that's screaming out help from all the darkness that they've been surrounded by. That part of them can hold on for dear life and say, I need this support, pull me out of this hell. That's why I only work with like two people a year, is because they are the ones that can get it. And it's very
Hmm.
hard because most of these people, they don't want that. They don't want to be challenged and stretched. They don't want to face the reality of what's really going on within them. They like the feel good stuff. They want to hire Tony Robbins because Tony's the cool name. They want to look at, the celebrities because that's what it seems. They are allowing yes men to insulate their demons more and more. And the higher you
Hmm.
climb on the ladder of success without doing the real work to face and battle yourself, the more they scream in your ear and take over your life, and then you become a
Hmm.
slave to that. And 30 years later, you're going to look back and going, well, I've got the nine-figure bank account. Um, I'm suffering.
Yeah.
My health is not where I want it to be. My
How's your
relationship,
soul?
yeah, my soul is burned out, and it's like I can't do this anymore. Now they're trying to figure out how to save their own lives when it's almost too late.
Hmm.
And this is the plight of humanity: is we wait till it's almost too late before we decide to actually do the real fucking work instead of discerning right now. Hey, this is showing up in the timing it is. I need to lean into it. I know I don't like the way it sounds. I know I don't like what I'm hearing. I don't even believe in what I'm hearing. But maybe I need to discern this and I need to accept it to see where it can take me, and then decide from that point once I've leaned into it a little bit more, rather than my knee-jerk reaction to be rejecting it from a cynical, skeptical place because I've been programmed by the powers that be to just be caught up in the demonic forces that are pushing high achievement rather than being a high performer in my life and in my business.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, I mean, I'm enjoying the conversation. Last two questions,
Me
we'll
too.
kind of land the plane.
Okay,
Man, we brought the intensity. I like it.
good.
Why, why, why do you feel? I mean, let's talk about the self-help industry and the personal
Sure.
development industry. I mean,
Yeah.
what sort of your take on that? And yeah.
It's I consider the self-help field. If you think about that self-help, yeah, okay. First of all, nobody has ever succeeded at anything, ever did it on their own. So let's get
Hmm.
the word self out of our head.
Hmm.
Self-help, you don't help yourself. You need an outside force that's equipped to push you, to stretch you, to challenge you. The problem is with the personal development space, which is the self-help field, is we have people that succumb to creating systems, programs, and compartmentalized processes, hoping that that helps people achieve what we define as success, which is money, scalability, and notoriety. How many followers do you have? How big is your business? And how much money can you make? If you're not a profitable person or nobody follows you, then why would I listen to you? Why would I pay attention to what you have to offer? That is an asymmetrical approach to human development and human performance. I have worked behind the scenes with people in that industry, and I have seen the ugly truth that they are sitting there collecting people's money, laughing at these people, going, you know what, look at these suckers buying into this shit. I just throw a bunch of stuff together, I just give it to them, they get caught up in the rat race, and then when they're done and they want more, now they're part of my community. Now they become my tribe. They become something that follows and hooks into me. And here's my thing. You should be able to hire a coach that makes you so mad, that pushes you so hard, that challenges you so intently that you end up hating their guts and you want to eventually break away from them. Anybody that makes you feel comfortable enough to hook into them for 20 years is not doing anything good for your life. They're actually sucking your bank account dry, and they're just kind of stringing you along. And that pisses me off is because these people, they teach you, if you want to make more money, buy my program, follow my coaching, and it's baked into their marketing, the idea at the subconscious level that you are personally going to evolve. And the reality is you get caught up chasing the idea of being a high performer, never truly achieving the goal. So that's what I've witnessed and why I have a problem with it. It's like Big Pharma. They got you hooked. Keep buying my program. Keep hiring me as a coach. I've met people who are like, my coach is the greatest coach ever. That's a problem. You should not like your coach. You should want to get away from them as soon as possible. My clients and I, when we're done, we're done. We break up officially. They actually end up challenging me and pushing back on me when I know they've reached their cap out point and we have literally squeezed out all their potential, that when they go off in their life, Anthony, they look back and go, I don't even recognize who I was before I met you, Wiley. And now they can go off and they can bring in other resources that only accentuate the fact that they are literally living at the top of their game consistently. If you don't have people that are doing that with you, I would rethink your approach to personal development and consider why you might be wasting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on the same shit that's regurgitated, repackaged, and re-offered to you year in and year out. Why do you need to go to 30 Date with Destinies with Tony Robbins? You're not getting anywhere. Sorry, just not.
I know.
So that's my take
loved,
on that.
I loved my first Unleash the Power Within. My brother did too, and he was like, my brother was like jumping on the chair and everything like that. Second time he saw Tony Robbins, he goes, it's fucking catharsis.
Same shit.
He goes, this is like pointless catharsis.
It's
You know what I mean? It's
transference.
like it's a show, and you see the people that repeatedly go. You know, they're going to feel good. They're going to pay for feelings. It doesn't do that.
It's
much.
transparent.
I like Tony. I mean, I listened to like Personal Power and shit 20 years ago, and I liked that. I've got value from some of his stuff. You know,
It's
but
like, yeah. I challenge it though. I challenge.
Yeah,
I've worked with some of Tony's closest friends, and I got to tell you, I challenge. 46 years later, what secrets does he have? Truly, at the end of the day, like people, he's just kind of continuously giving you the same thing he's been teaching for the last 4 decades. And I'm just going to bluntly call it what it is. And then people can hate me for that all they want to. But the reality is, I've been around these guys. I've seen them. I've been in their circles. And the truth of the matter is, that is not real transformation. Battling your demons is real transformation. Unfucking your life is real transformation. Looking at the things that scare you the most is real transformation. Having someone you cannot control in your corner is how you transform. All of that stuff is transference. That's it. It's transferring motivational spirit into you temporarily so that you can feel like you're going to get somewhere, and then you come back to the table going, okay, I gotta tap my vein again. What's another? How do I buy another $5,000 drug? You know what I mean?
I'm a gladiator.
Like, come on, guys. Yeah.
It's also it gets into that discernment and being able to see the loops that you're in and that sort of thing. Like I have plenty of flaws. I have a fuckload of them. I'm always working on them, you know, and sometimes I do better than other times. And I think in this, we need to be able to look at things and, like, you know, I've gotten a lot of value from Dave Asprey over the years. He does good work and that sort of thing. He's also talking about living to 180, and the dude looks old for his age. Is anyone talking about that? Like, does anyone have eyes?
Yeah,
You know,
I talk shit to his face.
I'm not shitting on him. Like he actually
Oh my
seems like
goodness.
a nice guy and like he's
Yeah.
got a good heart, but he looks
Yeah.
old for his age and he's talking
Yeah.
about living to 180. Like, are we in fantasy land and no one else calls that out? Like,
Hmm.
don't go to a doctor who's fat and has arthritis that's gonna just throw a bunch of pills at
Here's
you, you know?
I'm
Like
gonna.
if no
I'm
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to say here's the problem. In the ego, it's the ego of these guys. It gets so big that anybody that comes to the table with any information that challenges what they think they know, who they are, this again, they reject it and they kind of push it away because I'm the authority. And the problem that I've seen again, we
mhm,
had that conversation with him at dinner one night, and I'm just listening to it again. There's nothing bad, but at the end of the day, it's like, dude, you're what are you doing to truly optimize your life? How is it that you feel you figured it all out and that you are literally done working on yourself, that you are at a point where there's nothing else anybody could teach you because well, you've become this reputable leader in the industry. But the reality is, if you look at someone like that and you look at their life and go, well, where are their relationships at? How are they actually thriving behind the curtain? If their
mhm,
personal life is not matching their professional life or their public persona, we've got problems. And that
yeah,
is unacceptable for any human being to say, well, Wiley, that's judging them. Who are you? You probably got demons too. It's like, no, the fuck I
yeah,
don't. Because at the end of the day, I was willing to get in the trenches, get my ass kicked by my outside force, who still to this day, my
mhm,
business partner, keeps me at the top of my game so that I can do this work that I'm meant to do. I'm willing to stay in a good place. Are you? And it takes someone
right,
going, you know what, dude? You know what? Great. You want to live to 180 years old. You look old for your age. What are you not actually looking at in your life that's causing you to look that way, even though you're saying the words, selling the protocols, convincing people this is what it takes? That's I have a problem with that. And to me, I'm
yeah,
willing to work with guys like him because it's like you need an outside force to challenge and stretch you because you do have the biggest impact on millions of people and you're going to infect them improperly if you don't live the standard you're preaching from a platform. To me, it's
totally agree,
unacceptable.
and
Yeah.
I totally agree,
Yep.
and I do appreciate the things that he's done
Of
in our
course.
space and all of that,
Of course.
and like I said, I've got plenty of fucking blind spots. I got a lot of problems. I'm not like pointing the finger at other people. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, I think when we all speak truthfully, it actually helps us. It
Hmm.
actually uplifts all of us and challenges us to be better and do better for one another.
Yeah.
Well, Wiley, this has been a fucking awesome conversation. Is there anything else that you want to touch on before
Man, I swear.
we went down some tangents, but
Sure. Sure.
yeah,
I look at it this way. Anybody that's paying attention, no matter what level you're at, when again we go back to the principles we talked about in the beginning: slow is smooth, smooth is fast. It's time to reevaluate your approach. If you're having reactions to external stimuli that you cannot control in a very negative way, maybe it's time to actually slow down your breathing and go, you know what? Maybe these things are that I need to lean into and actually try to extract the benefit from, so I can go beyond my own limits right now. And the question becomes is, who are you following? Who are you trying to emulate, rather than who you're taking information from to better who you are first? And that's the same thing with the military. Is when I was a young military guy, I didn't want to emulate the leaders. I wanted to take good information from them and discard the bad and become my own leader and develop my own skills so that I can thrive in my leadership position. I want people to take that information, to be challenged, to go, you know what? Let me find someone who doesn't make me feel comfortable. Let me find someone who challenges me and makes me very uncomfortable. In fact, let me find someone or a resource outside of me that actually pisses me off a little bit. And let me see what
mhm,
they're capable of doing for me, rather than just getting caught up in spending money because it's somebody's celebrity status that everybody else is buying into. Maybe the no-name person is who I need. Or let me realize what it is that I need to face first within my life before I take the step towards buying into a program or hiring a coach. That's what I
mhm,
would say to people. And again, guys like that have benefits, but what are they taking you? Where are they leading you? Are you trying to
mhm.
emulate, copy and paste what they've talked about, or are you trying to figure out what's best for you based on your ability to face and battle what ails you first from within? Do the hard work. Go to the dark corners. That's where you want to hack your way to a better life.
Beautiful. So for our listeners who have enjoyed this conversation, where should they go to keep up with cool things you're working on? You mentioned your Wise Words and Whiskey podcast. They can
Yeah.
subscribe to that. Where else? Where are you
Please do.
active?
Well, I actively building out, like working on Twitter. I'm having conversations with people on Twitter. Apparently, it's a place that everybody keeps telling me I need to be, so I'm there as well right now. Wise words and whiskey
Careful,
with Wiley.
they'll shut your account down if you get a little lippy.
Oh yeah, I get it. I totally get it. I have no problem being lippy, but at the same time, I understand the nuanced nature of social media and how they play the game.
Yeah.
So,
Do it behind the paywall.
but WileyMcGraw.com has everything there from philosophies to white papers, access to the actual podcast itself. I would love people to subscribe and listen to what people that subscribe to the show can enter in a whiskey giveaway as well. We're doing a premium bottle of whiskey every single month for the rest of the year. One lucky person will take home a single malt Scotch, potentially a heavy bottom rocks glass set with that as well. But I'm doing my work here. I've got a couple projects, some influencers, doing like a fireside chat type of a live event around the country. So we're building that out as well right now. So and again, I'm just having some fun getting on these shows with guys like you and spreading the message.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I had a blast. WileyMcGraw.com, WileyMcGraw.com, Wise Words and Whiskey Podcast. Subscribe. Last one.
No
What's
E.
your favorite? Huh?
No E in the whiskey. Spelling it like the Scots do.
All right. No E in the whiskey.
Yeah,
And last question. What's your favorite Scotch or whiskey?
My favorite whiskey is single malt. I'm a single malt Scotch guy, and that's my go-to. And I sip maybe a tiny bit once a week as a little celebration. So I usually love my Balvenis. That's my favorite distillery.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah.
Well, Wiley, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a fun conversation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, guys, share this episode. Send it to people who would get value from it and enjoy the different paths and rabbit holes that we went down.
Right on.
All right. Thank you, Wiley.